second child. The second child's name is Benjamin. And so Joseph, the last guy in the long chain, so the last child to be born to Rachel, the last child to be born to Jacob at all is born to Rachel. His name is Joseph. And his brother Benjamin is born when his mom dies. So this guy Joseph is coming from a very painful place. He was old enough to know what was going on when his mom dies. And he sees all these brothers from all these other women, and now his own mom is gone. And he's got this little baby brother, and he's got this dad, and it turns out the dad is favoring him. That's the next one. Actually, skip, we'll do 37 first. I'll come back to 35. In Genesis 37, 3 through 4, that's the account of the father Jacob giving to Joseph the amazing Technicolor dream coat. In the NIV, it says a richly ornamented robe. We don't really have any idea what it is except that it was really pretty. Okay, so Jacob gave to Joseph this really awesome, expensive robe. It's like if today you had 12 children and you gave the youngest one a Corvette and all the rest of them got a Huffy, a bike. If you gave everybody a bike and then you gave your youngest one a Corvette, that's the equivalent here. If you were the oldest one, I imagine you wouldn't be happy about your bike. But, that's just what's going on here. So now let's go back to 35, and I'll just tell you what happened in 35:22. In 35:22, Reuben, the oldest child, goes into Bilhah, the slave of Rachel, who bore children to her. Remember one of those concubine situations? Reuben goes into Bilhah and sleeps with her, and we just get a line in there. It's just one little verse that just says, Reuben goes in and he sleeps with his father's concubine, Bilhah. Okay, dysfunctional again. Okay, so now we're moving on, and we're going to get to the absolute most dysfunctional aspect of this whole thing. In Genesis 38, now I have to set this up just a little bit, because in Genesis 37, Joseph gets sold to Egypt. We're going to come to that in a few minutes. But in 38, something happens. Joseph isn't around anymore. He doesn't know this, so this is not dysfunction that directly impacts upon Joseph's life. He's already gone. But it demonstrates the characteristics of the family he was in. And it's so disturbing that I have to just summarize it for you. This is how it goes. Jacob has his son Judah living at home with him. And Judah decides he's going to move out of the house and he's going to live in a new area. And he finds a woman, he gets married to this lady, and she gives him some children. His oldest child is his next child is Onan, and his third child is, I just forgot the name of the third child, Shelah. So Onan, and Shelah, those are the three boys he's got. And so when is old enough, Judah says, I need to get a wife for my son. And so he finds this woman named Tamar living in the area there, and he gets her to commit to marrying So Tamar marries But was not a very holy guy. I don't know what his problem was, but God somehow didn't like what was doing and allowed to die an early death. So now here's Tamar, a widow that has been brought into Judah's family, and her husband is gone. So in the old times, what you would do is if there was a woman who was unattached, she couldn't work, she didn't have any standing, she couldn't own property. And so the way you would take care of women back then is that you would either get them married or make sure they had children. And so in this case, there had been this custom that had been set up where the brother of the deceased man would then marry or sleep with the other woman, and she would have a child, and that child would be under the name of her original husband. Is it making sense? Okay, so the original guy dies, the brother has a child with the woman, and that child's last name effectively is the original guy's. But it would have been the same anyway because they're brothers. But, so he gets counted to this other guy. All right. Okay, so then Judah says to Tamar, I'm going to give you my other son so that this whole process can take place. So Onan gets hitched up with Tamar, and this is where it gets really weird. Onan coerces the situation such that he never has the opportunity to make Tamar pregnant. He refuses to make that happen. And you can read it for yourself. I just can't go into it. But he refuses to make that happen. And so God is disappointed with him, and God lets Onan die. Or in fact, it tells us that God kind of strikes him down. I don't know when or how, but so Onan's dead. And so now Tamar has been through 2 men. She's been through 2 men, and Shelah, the young guy, is not old enough now to be married. So Judah says, okay, just hang out with me in my household, be a widow in my household, and when Shelah gets old enough, I'll give him to you. But when Shelah got old enough, he didn't give Shelah to this woman because she has gone through 2 other guys, and Judah, this is his last son, so he's not going to give his last son to this woman, and so he just lets her live as a widow. And this gets even worse. Tamar then decides she still needs a son. So what she does is after Judah's wife dies, she dresses up like a prostitute and sits in front of the town gate of the town where Jacob is going to spend the night after shearing his sheep. And so Jacob goes to the gate. His wife is dead. He's been shearing sheep all day. And so he's at the gate, and he says to this prostitute, sleep with me, and I'll give you whatever you want. I'll give you a goat. And the woman says, well, what will you give me now to prove that sometime later I'll get the goat? He says, I'll give you my sash. And he gives her a sash, and they sleep together. She gets pregnant, and then she's back in Judah's house, and everybody knows she's pregnant, and they say she's a prostitute. We need to kill her. And Jacob says, okay, let's punish her. And she says, I'll be punished when the guy is punished too. Here's his thread, sash, whatever thing he gave her. Here's his sash. And he sees it, and he goes, dude. And he doesn't tell anybody, but he says, I think we'll let this one slide. Maybe she can live in my house, and we'll take care of her from now on, okay? Dysfunctional. Twisted and wrong. You thought everybody in the Bible was all nice, happy, and everything worked out perfectly for them all the time? That is incorrect. Most of the people you find in the Bible are worse than you. And, well, except for Jesus. You know, he's a little bit better than you, but that's okay. We'll get there. But so here's the deal. Dysfunctional to the max. That's the family Joseph was raised in. So now, let's spend a little bit of time on Joseph himself and see his story. So here we go. Joseph's journey. The first thing that we notice in Joseph's journey in chapter 37 is that Joseph had dreams of grandeur. He had these dreams, and the first dream he had was that he was putting together bushels of hay, basically, sheaves of wheat with his brothers. And in this dream, all of these sheaves of wheat were standing up, and then his sheaf stood a little taller, and all the other ones bowed down to it. Okay, so you've got a sheaf symbolizing every one of his brothers, and they're all bowing down to his. And he says, the best idea for me is to tell all of them right now. So he goes up to all his brothers and says, all of your sheaves of wheat bowed down to